There are people in this world who are most alive when no one is watching. When the streets grow quiet and the noise of conversation fades into the background, something inside them finally exhales. They do not fear the silence. They enter it the way others enter a familiar home. To them, solitude is not absence, but presence. Not emptiness, but fullness of being. Yet their peace is often misunderstood. Society worships connection, constant sharing, and the visible proof of belonging. To prefer aloneness is to invite suspicion. Are you lonely? Are you sad? Are you hiding from life? But for them, being alone is not a retreat from life. It is a return to it. They walk through their days quietly, finding joy in small, inward moments. A long walk at dusk, the hum of a song that no one else hears, the gentle clarity that comes when thoughts have space to breathe. They don't crave to be unseen. They crave to be unfragmented. Their solitude is not rebellion. It is self-preservation. And though the world may mistake their stillness for detachment, they are not numb. They feel deeply, sometimes unbearably so. The solitude they cherish is what allows them to metabolize life without drowning in it. It is not a symptom of coldness, but a form of sensitivity, a rhythm of existence that moves inward instead of outward. Psychologically, the love of solitude is rarely accidental. It often emerges from a complex intersection of temperament, neurobiology, and lived experience. For many, it begins with introversion, a fundamental orientation toward the inner world rather than the outer. Introverts are not necessarily shy. Their nervous systems are simply tuned differently. They draw energy from reflection, not stimulation. In quietness, they reset. In noise, they scatter. Neuroscience reveals that introverts process dopamine, the chemical of excitement and reward, more efficiently. Because of this, too much external stimulation can overwhelm their circuits, leaving them fatigued rather than exhilarated. Silence, then, not an escape, it is regulation. They retreat not to avoid life, but to digest it. Highly sensitive individuals often fall into this group as well. Their minds absorb subtleties, tone, tension, contradiction, like a sponge. The world for them is not just loud, it is porous. Every glance, every unfinished conversation, every emotional vibration lingers within them longer than it should. Aloneness provides the psychic space to release these accumulated impressions, to return to equilibrium. There is also a deeper layer, self-referential thinking. Those who love solitude tend to live in a constant dialogue with themselves. They examine thoughts as if studying light through glass, seeking meaning in the smallest ripple. This introspection, though beautiful, demands room. Relationships, conversations, and social expectations can sometimes feel like interruptions to a delicate internal current. Such people often exhibit emotional self-sufficiency, not because they distrust others, but because their inner landscape is rich enough to sustain them. Their imagination, their inner voice, their private rituals become companions. They do not need crowds to feel alive. They need consciousness. But underneath this lies a paradoxical fragility. The mind that thrives on reflection is also vulnerable to overthinking. The same silence that soothes them can also echo. Their solitude, though nourishing, can become too complete, too closed. And yet, they return to it again and again, because in that stillness they remember who they are before the world told them what to be. Here lies the paradox of those who love being alone. The very thing that protects them can quietly imprison them. Their solitude begins as a sanctuary, a space where thought and feeling can stretch without judgment. But over time, the walls can harden. What once was freedom starts resembling isolation. They tell themselves they don't need anyone, and for a while, it feels true. But the deeper truth is gentler and more complicated. They do need others, just not in the same way, not as distraction or validation, but as mirrors through which to remember their own humanity. Solitude gives them control, a self-created ecosystem where nothing unexpected can bruise them. Yet this safety has a price. It dulls the friction that relationship provides, the friction that helps us grow. To live entirely alone in one's mind is to risk becoming untested, to replace life with thought about life. They can begin to prefer imagining conversations over having them, or reflecting on love rather than feeling it unfold messily and unpredictably in real time. Their independence, so admired by others, can also become a disguise for avoidance. When one is hurt early in life by neglect, misunderstanding, or emotional chaos, solitude becomes the only reliable ground. They learn to self-soothe because no one else could be trusted to do so. The world outside felt inconsistent. Their inner world, though lonely, at least obeyed their own rhythm. And so, years later, even when affection appears, they hesitate. The body remembers the safety of retreat, but every form of protection eventually becomes a limitation. The person who hides from noise also hides from music. The one who avoids disappointment also avoids wonder. Solitude, when clutched too tightly, can anesthetize the heart. A gentle numbness mistaken for peace. They begin to confuse emotional neutrality with maturity, forgetting that to feel deeply, joy, grief, love, is not weakness, but proof of being alive. And yet, there is beauty in their restraint. Unlike those who rush toward noise to escape themselves, they have learned to stay with their own company. They are fluent in the language of stillness. But the question begins to rise, quietly, beneath their calm. If solitude is where I find myself, why do I sometimes feel so far away within it? The question deepens. Is their love for solitude a mark of strength, or a scar they have learned to wear gracefully? To love being alone can mean one has discovered the beauty of self-containment, but it can also mean one has learned to survive without expecting anyone to stay. Many who dwell comfortably in solitude did not begin there by choice. They arrived because somewhere along the way connection hurt too much. Loneliness, when endured long enough, transforms. It begins to resemble peace. The body confuses stillness for safety. The mind learns to fill silence with imagination, and soon, what was once a wound becomes an identity. I am someone who does not need the world. This is the tender contradiction at the heart of solitude. It is both an act of liberation and an echo of loss. The same walls that preserve one's clarity also mute the knock of others trying to enter. And so solitude can be both healing and haunting. A space where one feels fully oneself, and yet faintly incomplete. It grants the privilege of self-observation, but denies the chaos of shared becoming. The philosopher may call it self-realization, the psychologist, emotional self-protection. Both are right. Solitude reveals who we are without influence. Yet, by removing influence, it also hides from us the dimensions of self that only love, conflict, or misunderstanding can reveal. The mirror of aloneness is clear, but narrow. It reflects the self without distortion, but also without depth. And here the paradox spills into the existential. If every human seeks both freedom and belonging, what happens when freedom demands the absence of others? Those who love being alone often live at this edge, yearning for unbroken inner space, yet secretly haunted by the faint ache of separateness. They may walk through life like quiet satellites, orbiting humanity, close enough to feel its warmth, far enough to protect their silence. Yet, in their quiet, there is something sacred. Solitude is the birthplace of art, philosophy, and self-awareness. It is where thought becomes poetry and emotion becomes insight. Every revelation humanity has ever known was first whispered in solitude, in deserts, in monasteries, and sleepless nights where no one was listening. To love being alone is, in some way, to participate in this ancient lineage of seekers, those who meet the universe not through dialogue, but through contemplation. But this path comes with a spiritual tax. To see life too deeply can also make one feel detached from it. The solitary soul stands at a distance where meaning becomes vivid, but touch becomes faint. They can describe the stars, but sometimes forget how to feel the rain. And so, the question lingers, can one be fully human in isolation? Or does our humanity require the friction of the other? The gaze, the misunderstanding, the interruption that reminds us that consciousness is not complete when unshared. Perhaps solitude and connection are not opposites, but tides meant to take turns. One carries us inward, the other outward. Both are necessary to remain whole. To understand solitude fully, one must step beyond psychology and into the realm of existence itself. Being alone is not just a personal preference. It is the ground of being. No matter how surrounded we are by love, friendship, or noise, each of us ultimately lives within the boundary of our own consciousness. No one can breathe for us. No one can think our thoughts. Solitude, then, is not an exception to human life. It is its condition. Those who love being alone have simply stopped fighting this truth. They have ceased treating solitude as an exile and begun treating it as a homecoming. In their quiet, they encounter the fundamental stillness that underlies all things. They sense that beneath the movements of social life, the conversations, the roles, the endless exchange of words, there is an unspoken dimension where life simply is. To dwell there is to touch something timeless. This is why solitude often feels strangely sacred. In aloneness, the boundaries between the self and the world blur. The sound of wind through leaves, the rhythm of one's breathing, the soft light entering a room, these become not background noise, but communion. The solitary person begins to perceive that meaning does not have to be manufactured through interaction. It can be revealed through presence. But this revelation carries weight. To realize one's separateness is also to recognize one's fragility. The vastness of the inner world can inspire awe or fear. To face oneself without distraction is to encounter every unhealed memory, every hidden longing. Many people avoid solitude not because they dislike quiet, but because they fear what might surface within it. Those who love being alone, on the other hand, have accepted that confrontation as necessary. They walk willingly into their own depths, even when it stings. In that sense, solitude is not isolation, but initiation, a rite of passage into authenticity. The person who endures it learns that connection is meaningful only when one has first met oneself. From this perspective, solitude is not the opposite of love. It is its precondition. Only a mind that has learned to rest in its own silence can truly listen. Only a heart that has known its own company can offer genuine warmth without demand. And yet, there remains a gentle melancholy woven into the fabric of solitude. To be alone is to stand in the open field of existence, without guarantees. It is to realize that no one can ever fully know us, nor we them. This awareness can feel like loss, but it is also liberation, because once we accept that separation is inevitable, every act of connection becomes sacred precisely because it is fleeting. Thus, those who love being alone are not rejecting the world. They are bowing to its impermanence. They know that silence is not emptiness, but the space through which all things pass. They sense that in the end, all relationships, all achievements, all words dissolve back into the same quiet, and perhaps this is why they do not fear solitude. It is the rehearsal for eternity. In the end, the love of solitude is not a symptom to be cured, but a state to be understood, and when lived consciously, to be cherished. To love being alone is to have discovered an inner refuge where one can rest without performance, where the noise of identity softens into simple being. But solitude, like any medicine, depends on the dose. Taken with awareness, it heals. Taken excessively, it numbs. The art is balance, to know when to withdraw and when to return. True solitude is not a barricade but a bridge, leading one back into the world with clearer eyes. It is the interval that allows music to exist, the pause that gives meaning to speech. Those who understand solitude do not reject connection, they refine it. Their relationships become intentional rather than compulsive, chosen rather than chased. They give quietly, listen deeply, and love without needing to be filled. To live this way requires honesty, to admit when solitude is nourishment and when it has become avoidance. It means learning to open the door when the heart grows too still, to step back into the imperfect warmth of human company, even if it risks misunderstanding. Because solitude is meant to restore our capacity to relate, not to erase it. The goal is not to choose between aloneness and togetherness, but to weave them. To walk through life as both observer and participant. To move between silence and speech, withdrawal and return, the way the tide moves between sea and shore, each motion completing the other. And perhaps that is the quiet wisdom of those who love being alone. They teach us that peace is not found in constant company, nor in endless retreat, but in the ability to inhabit one's own presence fully. When solitude ceases to be loneliness and becomes awareness, it transforms from a wall into a window, a clear opening through which one can see both the self and the world with equal clarity. So to those who find joy in their own company, do not apologize for your silence. It is not absence. It is depth. It is not indifference. It is intimacy with life itself. Walk your solitary path with tenderness, but leave its gates open. For solitude, when lived wisely, does not end in isolation. It ends in connection, born not of need, but of freedom.